Penguins versus reindeers in ice basketball. There was a crash and a splash and a creaking crack and a splush. Someone in our story is about to have a lovely surprise swim. We'll find out more about that in a bit. First off, we have to meet the important people in our story. And let me tell you, they know they're important. Santa's reindeers. You might wonder what reindeers do when they've finished helping Santa to deliver the presents. And in today's story, you'll find out. They magically travel to the tiny island of Frozenia, a winter wonderland that you won't find on any maps. The reindeers were, well, a bit full of themselves. I mean, being part of the whole Santa crew, who hasn't heard of them? They're like Arctic celebs. The only other animals to be found on this snowy island were the penguins. Well, there were a couple of walruses, but they really don't want to come up in this story. The penguin huddle had lived on the island for many centuries, millennia even, longer than the reindeers, and the two, well, they just didn't get along. The reindeers were so big and took up so much space and, well, basically hogged everything, leaving the penguins with nothing more than a puddle of water, whilst the reindeers patrolled the wide, glassy, frozen lake, growling at any penguin who dared to come near. Peggy, the penguin, had had enough. She wasn't exactly in charge, but she was the sort of penguin not to be messed with. She would give Paddington a run for his money with her own hard stare. After another attempt to step on the frozen lake and being growled at yet again, I think it was Comet or it might have been Dancer, she stomped right up to Rudolph, his red nose resplendent. "Give us back our lake," she honked loudly in his face. "Oh, I beg your pardon?" he said sleepily, contemplating whether to growl again. "Come on, what do you lot need the lake for?" Rudolph shrugged. "We like to have a swim." The other reindeers tittered at this. "Reindeers don't swim! And what are we supposed to eat if you're hogging all the fish?" "Well, there's plenty of perfectly good snagglethorn bushes to chomp on," observed Vixen. "Penguins can't eat snagglethorns." A sly smile spread over Prancer's face. "I tell you what, we could have a competition. Whoever wins gets to keep the lake." Rudolph smiled too. "There's a good idea." "Whatever," said Peggy, flapping her little wings in frustration. "So we can choose the game," said Vixen, fluttering her eyelids innocently. Peggy nodded. Anything to get things back to normal. The reindeers looked at each other and said as one, "Ice basketball." Peggy nearly fell over in amazement. "Basketball? Have you seen how tall penguins are? Or rather, how tall they aren't? How in heaven's name are we meant to reach a basketball hoop?" "That's the deal. Take it or leave it." The penguins had no choice. Grumbling to herself, Peggy hurried back to the huddle and explained what they had to do. The game was planned for the very next month, which gave both teams time to prepare. The penguins ran in laps around the lake. The reindeers lifted weights and did press-ups, which is harder than it sounds when you've got hooves and 4 legs to think about. And then the day arrived. Bright blue skies and sunshine glinting on the surface of the frozen lake itself, its glassy surface marked out with the hoops at either end. A whistle sounded, and the game was on. The reindeers, towering and agile, boasted an impressive advantage with their lofty antlers, perfect for snagging high-flying rebounds. The penguins, however, were not to be underestimated. These dapper athletes slid across the ice with astonishing speed, their flippers whirling in the ball in a blur of black and white. Peggy almost flew upside down to intercept the ball before heading it into the hoop to a massive cheers. Snowflakes pirouetted gently from the sky, dusting the lake's surface. Prancer executed a majestic, albeit slightly clumsy dunk, her hooves thundering on the icy ground. Yet, every time a reindeer leapt for a basket, a squadron of penguins would form a feathery fortress, bouncing on each other's backs, flapping wildly to block the shot. The penguins erupted into laughter when a particularly ambitious reindeer attempted a fancy hoofwork maneuver, only to slip and send the ball bouncing off a confused yet amiable walrus. But in the second half, The reindeers managed to use their antlers to knock ball after ball, and their powerful hoops clattered on the icy lake. In the excitement, no one noticed a creak and a cracking sound, and no one spotted the crack-jumping lightning forks which spread and spread until with an ear-splittering crunch, the ice fell in glacial chunks, and the penguins and reindeers were plunged into the freezing water. Splosh! "Help!" shouted Comet as he thrashed around, having fallen in. "Get me out of here!" yelled Vixen as Rudolph desperately tried to remember how to swim, which was a bit of a problem as, well, he'd never actually learned to swim. The penguins, of course, were doing far better with this turn of events. In fact, it was bliss to finally submerge into the cool, clear water amongst the fish. Peggy couldn't resist it. "I thought you said you liked swimming," she yelled back. "You don't seem to be enjoying yourself very much." "Get us back on land!" "What's it worth? I can't believe you're trying to negotiate with me right now." Peggy shrugged. It seemed like the exact right moment and very perfect time to negotiate. Teeth chattering, Rudolph rolled his eyes. "Oh, all right then. Have your stupid lake back." There was no time to lose before the reindeers met an icy fate. They teamed up and, using their beaks, towed the shivering reindeers to the shore, where they slumped gratefully. The penguins whooped and cheered and dived and swam in the lake, going deep for fish which they ate and ate until they couldn't fit another minnow in. "You can still drink the waters. You can even share it with us if you like," said Peggy kindly. After all, a bunch of very wet and bedraggled reindeers made a very sorry sight. Rudolph gave a small smile. "To be honest, I don't think reindeers are designed for swimming, or being in a freezing lake anyway. I think we'll stick to the snaggle-thorn woods." "Good. Penguins aren't designed for thorns, snaggles, or otherwise, so it's all yours." And with that, the two shook hands. Well, Peggy held out a wing and Rudolph a hoof, and it was a bit more like a fist bump, really. Kind of. And that's how peace was returned to Frozenia. And the animals got on peaceably until it was time for the reindeer to travel back to the North Pole. And as they got on so much better, they even brought some of Santa's special mince pies back too. What? You didn't know penguins liked mince pies? Well, now you do. Thank you to Poppy for creating Peggy the Penguin using our Storyquest character creator. Such a calm, kind, and very serious penguin who gets stuff done. Thank you so much for that, and you can create your own character for a story using the Storyquest character creator on the Fun Kids website. And now let's get over to this week's Story Master. It's Sam. Well, Sam, you are our Storyquest this week. Penguins versus Reindeer Ice Basketball. What made you send that title to us? Because there's a lot going on, Sam.
So, I quite like basketball, and I just looked around my room and I saw a plush. So I saw a penguin right here, and then I saw this little guy, and I was like, So penguins versus reindeer, ice something. So I was like, ice basketball. Got it. And then I just sent it.
Well, you love basketball, but basketball would be very tricky to play on ice, don't you think?
Yeah, it was. Because if the basketball was made out of ice, then you couldn't really dribble. Because, well, it would just shatter.
How good do you reckon a penguin would be at basketball? Let's do pros and cons.
Well, the pros could be, their wings are quite flat, so their palms would always be flat to dribble and to shoot.
Sam, thank you so much for being our story master.
Thank you.
Got an idea for a story? Tell us the title at funkidslive.com/storyquest, and we could bring your story to life. For a new story each week, make sure you hit subscribe or follow so you don't miss a single episode.